And welcome back to another episode of Detonation. It's really fun. It's the Radfest people. It's David and Susan. They've come to give us an ocean planetary society conference, post conference wrap up. It's really good. How are you guys going over there in the United States of America?
We're doing well in Phoenix, wouldn't you say, Susan?
I would say so. Absolutely wonderful.
And it's really
We're happy
fun.
to be here to tell you about Ocean Planet Conference and maybe work in a little Radfest as we go.
Oh, I'm so excited! This is my favorite. This is my favorite type of show. We get to hear all the good things that are happening with these conferences. You know, conferences are great because it's not only the fun topics, you know, that we get to talk about. You know, like either Radfest, longevity, or the ocean. You get to meet tons and tons of really, really exciting people at these conferences, and the networking experience is incredible. You know, and I want to hear some of these cool people that you get to meet along the way on the journey. That's really, really good. So let's kick it off. Welcome back to Detonation. We're always excited to have you here at Detonation, where we're putting death out of business. Don't forget that part. That's what we're doing here at Detonation nowadays. So that's really good. But it's David and Susan, lovely to have you back. All right, so let's talk about it. Open up. What have you been? You've been gallivanting around again. Tell us what you've been up to.
Well, it was actually because of Radfest that we got invited to the Ocean Planet Conference.
That's
There you
what
go.
I mean. These networking opportunities.
We went to a breakfast of the Sense Foundation and met Celia, who is Ray Kurzweil's Chief Marketing Officer. And she talked to us about the Ocean Planet Conference, and David expressed a great interest, and she gave us some tickets, and so we went. So it was just as simple as that.
It was a perfect match. I grew up on the books of Jacques Cousteau and the journeys of his ship Calypso, and just loved that as a kid. Actually, even thought about being an oceanographer at one time. However, went a different route. The point is that the interest was there, and then meeting Celia, who works so closely with Ray Kurzweil, one of my favorite, if not my most favorite futurists. I'm thinking if she's going to be there, then this is something that, we should go take a look at. So this conference happened in Los Angeles back on the 18th and the 19th. So it's, not too long ago that this happened. And like Susan said, we found out about it through that breakfast meeting at the Sense Foundation. So we were really excited. We went with the idea that we would be obviously looking at the Ocean Planet Conference, but also with a look towards, what this means to the future and what it means to us as transhumanists.
Yeah, and there's a lot there going on. I just came off a show with Kate Lofchuk, and we were talking about the symbiosis between humans and the environment, and the fact that if you want to protect human and you want to indulge in this longevity notion, you actually have to care about the environment. If you don't care about the environment and you destroy the environment, you'll end up destroying yourself, which is antithetical to your goals of being a transhumanist and antithetical to your goals of trying to live a happy, healthy, long life. So this is really important. And what I like about this conference that you've gone to is there's emphasis on the ocean. Now, if you look at the world objectively, you'll notice that there's a lot more water than there is land. Actually, there's a lot of water out there, and there's a big Pacific Ocean which eats up a lot of it, but the Atlantic is also nice and big. And so it actually comes down to, yes, the rainforest is important. Yes, biological life, mammals are all important. Humans running across the land, but actually, when you look at it, there's a giant big ocean out there full of teeming with life, and that actually comes down to something that's super important for the world, and it's our ocean. And we don't really think about it because we're land creatures and we're walking around on the land and we jump on planes and trains and cars and it's all land-based, but actually the world is a big blue dot. What do you guys say?
Well, Susan is holding some notes that we took about this, and a couple of the statistics here are really amazing, and they support exactly what you're talking about. 90% of the goods that are shipped in the world are shipped via the ocean. 90%. 50% of the human population, we're land dwellers, like you said, but 50% of the human population lives within 200 kilometers of the ocean. So we're very dependent on that. And then one thing that really came of interest is 50% of the oxygen that the planet has is produced by the ocean itself. You know, we think of the rainforest, like you mentioned, but 50% of the breathable oxygen comes from the ocean. So you're exactly right. And I think Ocean Planet, you know, they pointed out the fact of the big blue dot that, you know, matter of fact, one of the speakers even said, you know, why do we even call this Earth? We should call it water.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
But yeah, there was a number of other things that were along that line too that I hadn't thought of. They talked about something called the commons, the things that everybody owns and nobody owns. And the air is one, space now is one, clearly the ocean is one. And then they brought up another one that you and I are using right now. That's the commons. That's the internet. And they pointed out that internet connectivity between the continents is done by oceanic cables. Satellite certainly does, you know, move some of that signal, but the vast majority of it is done by cables, you know, across the ocean. So everything is ocean-based on this planet.
Yeah, it goes back to the Bible because, you know, in the Bible, God said it was Earth, right? And I guess after God says it, I mean, you got to go with what God says. It's called Earth. But I agree. Maybe it's time to challenge God on the fact that, you know, he misnamed the planet. Yeah, but you're right. The ocean is incredibly important. Human civilization pops up around the ocean mainly because of trade. I mean, we usually congregate around fresh water, and fresh water is running towards the ocean. So if you look at the fertile Mediterranean / Fertile Crescent, or whatever they call it in the Middle East there, a lot of those big cities, Cairo, for example, that's ocean-based by default because it's at the end of a big snaking river that becomes very fertile, and then you get to trade off there and go off into the Mediterranean. And the Mediterranean was a really good place to establish a lot of these early civilizations because it was a good testing ground for trade and for naval combat and warfare and getting used to rough ocean presence. And they've been doing that you know, before the Bronze Age collapse. I mean, you had, before the Bronze Age collapse, there was even trade embargoes. I mean, these guys had trade embargoes going on where they'd say, King, whatever his old-fashioned name is, says, don't trade with that other king over there because that other king, you know, he's building I don't know what he's building, but he's not doing something that enhances our civilization, and then it obviously all collapsed. But that Mediterranean experience was really, really important for humans to prepare, you know, to go out into the vast sea. And European colonialism in the 1400s, well, not colonialism so much, the exploration period was when humans really took off and really decided to use the ocean as a resource to explore the world, and they went everywhere. They went to North America, they went to India, they went to Australia, they went to the Pacific. Captain Cook being a very famous explorer, shot around the globe. Christopher Columbus, think of him what it was. They used this thing, and the ocean is the framework for all of that. And we still haven't, as you say, we haven't really broken out of that. As 90% of the trade, your DC-9 behind you or whatever, the aircraft don't do much of the lifting.
That's right.
It's the cargo ships. It's trade between China and America. All that trade, those trillions of dollars, is going around on boats. And that is inherently
and those boats are, you know, these days driven by, you know, petroleum of some type. And there was talk at the conference about the future technology of what boats will be after the petroleum age. And they were talking about solar-powered boats. But quite honestly, there is a high-tech movement to go back to wind power. So like for the area that you were talking about, it's boats moving across the Mediterranean. And then later on, Christopher Columbus sailing where he did, and where he ended up because of the way that the winds moved.
Yeah.
And they showed a chart of the major seaports around the world and connected the dots between the prevailing winds. I mean, those ports are in those particular places because that's where the ships land when the wind pushed them around. So even though we're moving with petroleum these days under power, the ports really haven't changed. The infrastructure was built up there. It's probably a good thing because of that, because if we move back to smart wind-powered boats, except this time with artificial intelligence being able to decide when they move and how to set the sails, and supplementing it with electrical generation, we still end up moving back to those very same seaports.
Old is new again, because when you talk about space, like you're talking about this creation of the commons, you're talking about solar sailing. I mean, it's going back to you're sailing on the winds of the sun. So if space is a common resource, we're going back. The old is new again. I love it. It's so exciting.
Exactly right.
Tell us more about this ocean conference. What else did we learn here? This is so exciting.
Well, the very first speaker that we had, actually, Dr. Ellis is the founder, and he provided some opening comments, and we need to come back and talk about him. He's an amazing person to have put this together and to brought these speakers together for this year one of this conference. But the very first speaker that followed him is a NASA astronaut. She rode the very last space shuttle to the International Space Station, and then she went back again and rode a rocket this time to go back up there. So she has, what did she have, 104 days in space, something like that.
Wow.
And it was really, really interesting to listen to her talk, not only about the science work that she did there, but she is an artist, a sketch artist. And so she was sharing the kind of what maybe you might consider to be the softer side of the science project that you don't necessarily see in NASA films. And then she started talking about moving around the space station and doing this function and doing that function, much like maybe you or I would going around the house. You go, well, I went out to the kitchen because this is in this drawer and this. So she's doing this with the space station. And for me, that really put a human touch on what it was like to be in space. She's also an aquanaut, so she swims, she dives, and then a lot of her NASA training preparation for in space is done underwater. And they brought some of those films showing, what her training and so forth looked like. So the deep ocean and going into space, very, very much connected.
And I think for me, I was really excited to meet her. Like we had lunch with her. There was a big lunch, and we got to speak with her personally and had our photo taken with her. But the thing was, like David would sometimes say to me, Susan, the space station is going to be coming over the sky tonight at like 9:47 p.m. So we'd go outside into the street and we'd look up at this little dot going over the sky. And then we met someone who'd been in the space station, and I was really excited for that.
So it took that little dot in the sky and made it very, very personal.
Yeah.
You're right. It's the networking and small conferences like this, networking with the speakers like that. It's just, it's wonderful.
Yeah,
that's someone that, we were talking, Mr. Kurtz, right? And I love Mr. Kurtz. He's been up to space, sort of space in a MiG. And, it's kind of the homemade version of going to space, right? And in this day and age, definitely. And he's a wonderful guy, and he's brought me lots of people from the Planetary, the Mars Society, and the Moon, and this society, and that society. But what's interesting is, we're living in a post-Earthrise. Everyone's suffering from a PTSD sort of thing of post-Earthrise, where they sort of realized how small the Earth is and the finitude of the biodiversity on the planet, and everybody sort of. But you can take it either way. You can either embrace it or be terrified of it. And I think someone actually getting to meet somebody who's gone up there, woken up, and they're like, wow, that's India in my like as my cockpit view, or like my I get to see the United States today, or I'm looking at the Arctic or whatever. I mean, looking at somebody and talking to somebody who's actually experienced that sort of a view, and then having the big black vision behind them, for me, that's not terrifying. That's encouraging. That's exciting. That's the type of person that I'd want to meet, that I want to get a photo with. And not only have they done that, but then they've said, wow, what's underneath that blue layer? Let's go down. Let's go and look at fish. Let's go and look at the oceanic trench. I mean, if you're into exploration and stuff. I mean, there's a Titanic down there. There's plenty of ships down there, under there. There's plenty of planes and things that have you can go and have a look at. Yeah, it's such an exciting experience, and you can either embrace it or not. And I think people like this, that you've met on this journey, are really encouraging, really fundamental to showing how fun and productive and exciting life really is.
Yeah, it really is. She had a couple of pictures that just really grabbed a hold of me. One of them was a picture taken from the space station of the space shuttle that she was riding to the space station.
Wow.
And then behind, in the background, of course, you can see an arc of part of the Earth. And you can see that thin stretch of atmosphere. And one of her comments that struck me is she says, when you're up there in the space station and you're looking down at the Earth, you realize that there's only one border that makes a difference. And it's that thin blue line between the Earth and outer space. Because everything else is connected.
Yeah.
To have that perspective.
Yeah, that's why there's a hole over in the atmosphere over Tasmania, and it terrifies me to think that there's that thin blue line. They talk about the thin blue line when they talk about police, but I'm more worried about the thin blue line up there.
Yeah, right.
Yes, that's right. And they did talk about some of the exploration. I was looking here for my notes, but something like 95% of the, do you have that number?
95, I think it was.
Yeah, 95% of the ocean bottom has never been mapped in any kind of detail. Only 15%, I do remember that statistic, only 15% of the ocean has been mapped in anything that you would even consider to be modern detail at all, with enough resolution to be very, very useful. So while there is Earth underneath that big blue body of water, maybe that's why it's called Earth. Yeah. While there's Earth under that big blue body of water, we don't know what most of it is. We don't know what most of what lives down there. And some of the pictures that they showed of some of the things that do live down there look pretty darn strange. If we're looking for alien life, maybe it's right here on this planet.
True.
Yeah, those creatures, they haven't seen the sun in a while, and they've morphed into something alien looking. I totally agree with that. When we talk about expanding life across the universe, I don't know if we're going to take some of these things, because the aliens don't know what hit them. Like, these strange critters down there, they're a bit creepy, and some of them have big teeth, and they're blobs, and they're...
Well, I'm a big proponent of humanity becoming a multi-planet species. I love the idea of colonization, moving people to live and work on the moon and on Mars. I think that's something for a variety of reasons that we need to do. But I also really think that it's really important that we look at our own planet and we look at the ocean itself as a place for habitation. And for commerce. The oil and gas industry is doing that. By the way, draw a parallel to RADFest here. One of the things I really like about RADFest is that it, of course, is about super longevity, and it pulls together quite a varied audience of people that are coming at super longevity from very different trajectories. And they're all coming together for a common purpose. And I think that's very commendable. It's one of the things I like. Well, this Ocean Planet Conference has done the same thing with a focus on the ocean and the future. So at this conference, we had oil and gas executives. We had members of the U.S. military. We had scientists, we had engineers, we had artists, we had entrepreneurs. We had a very wide range of people, very much like RADFest, coming together to do this. And one of my interests in going there was I remember reading Jacques Cousteau's books, as I told you earlier, and being a bit of a futurist myself, looking forward and saying, well, gee, what's this going to look like maybe, in 50 or 100 years into the ocean? And I envision seeing the same kind of things that I envisioned for the moon and Mars, except on the surface of the ocean and in the depths of the ocean. Right now, the oil and gas industry, is doing that. I guess, everybody has seen, pictures of the oil rigs, sitting atop the ocean and, people working on that. But we were also shown some of the pictures of the technology of what they do, putting all this information technology, the pumping technology, the surveying technology underwater. And it looks like a big cityscape down there underneath these. So it doesn't take much more imagination to look at that and go, if we can go to the moon and mine and build, if we can go to Mars and do that, what about out here in the depths of the ocean itself? One of the things that I get pushback on from my transhumanist view of radical life extension is, what are you going to do with all the people? And sometimes people will volunteer, well, I suppose they'll go off-world. But I think there's a lot of place right here on this world for some very interesting living locations. And I think ultimately, not only does that help maybe a population problem, but it also helps us in future space exploration. There are at least 6 bodies in our own solar system that probably have oceans of some type. Moons of Jupiter and Saturn, for example. So when we get there, wouldn't it be great to have already pioneered living in the depths of our own ocean, to going there and taking a look at that? We shouldn't be biased to only go to rocky little worlds. We should go to any place that can offer us things that will enhance our own civilization, and perhaps, who knows what we'll find there. Maybe those things that are really strange looking down in our own depths will be quite as strange as what we find out there.
Yeah. Susan, what do you think? Did you enjoy the conference? Did you meet lots of cool people, exciting people? And can you link it to RADFest experience?
I talked about Charlie or something.
I loved it. I had no idea what I was going to. And I know this is just really simple, but even some of the photos that they had up on the screen of the Earth, like being in the space station looking at the Earth, you saw this beautiful round body, that's the Earth. So there was really about that. I think it was just the diversity of the whole conference. Like, we were under the ocean looking at the oil, seeing people like they built submarines and how they can go down into the ocean. And then there's, I've got a little flyer here of underwater robotics. Like, there are students there looking at they're building robotics. And then, then next minute we're up into space. And so to me, it was very diverse. I loved the person who put it on, Dr. Ellis. As soon as I met him, he's from the UK, and he has an accent, and he's got half American, half UK accent. So I said to him, "So where are you from?" And he said, "Well, I'm from the UK." And I said, "And you've lived in the US a long time, haven't you?" Because he was like rolling his R's, and he had a little bit of an American accent. So very, very diverse person. Been a lot with space development. David can tell you more on that. And just the quality of the people, like the speakers. Just about everybody was a doctor. They all talked, huge diverse. They even had a woman, Susie, someone who was a kite person. She would do a lot of kite work. And we also got this thing here about becoming a space astronaut. We're looking at that. Oh, hang on a minute. Gone the wrong way.
It's always the way. It's always the way you don't.
There you go.
Yeah.
We looked this up before we got onto the talk with you, and it's actually serious. Like, this person on this booth had said to us, "You can become an astronaut." So we took the card, and David looked at it just before the call, and it's actually legitimate. You can fill in an application.
An extensive one.
Yeah, and they want you to send a video as to why you want to be an astronaut. So it is actually a serious thing that they're looking for people to be astronauts. So,
Mr. Kurtz, you're watching.
I'm not going to. Yeah.
Get in touch with Susan and David ASAP, Mr. Kurtz.
That's right.
Well, next minute we'll be waving at you from the space station or somewhere up in space, and we can
don't
do
miss your ticket.
A tour. So for me, it was just the diversity, and us going to Radfest got us to this, and so there's a lot of things out there that we can get involved in. I mean, I'm really excited, and as far as the transhumanist goes, we're all, we're looking into the future, and we were talking also about, like, so many people now say, well, the ocean, the planet is getting polluted. We have to save it for our future generations. And I'm saying, well, hold on a moment. Save it for me. I'm the future generation. It's no good saying, well, I'm saving it for my grandkids. I want to save the world for me. And I think once we start looking and taking responsibility for saving it for ourselves, I think it takes a different look as to everything what's happening on the planet.
Super longevity really changes that, doesn't it?
It does. Yeah, it really does.
Yeah.
Yeah, it becomes your responsibility, and that's part of the reason that we've got into that huge mess is everything is being put on the credit card. Debt has been put on the credit card. The environment has been put on the credit card, and it's an intergenerational debt where they're trying to pass everything down. But hang on, you throw the super longevity in the works, and suddenly you're not allowed to pass it down anymore. You got to take responsibility.
Right.
And I'm really, really happy that Radfest has enabled you to grab onto some of these opportunities, because I'm assuming that this is just the first of many opportunities that an event like Radfest will open the doors up to. So you can communicate and attend more events like this, and I think that's really important, because these are big topics, big discussions. But if you have the right people in the right room, if you're talking about all the different sorts of people that you're talking about with Google and Department of Defense and doctors and big thinkers, and if you get all those resources and all that intellect in the same room, putting their heads together and using their own tools and skills, you can achieve big things. These people can make big moves collectively. Much more than some people in a wide universal consciousness can. Sometimes. So, no, I totally agree. I think it's fantastic. I would have loved, visiting the astronaut lady, absolutely. And yeah, the environment is something that we should all care about. We all have to care about it, whether it's for us or for future generations, and or for the sake of the environment itself, for the sake of other sentient beings, other fish creatures and animal creatures and things. I mean, nobody wants any degree of warming. I mean, that's not what we're about here. We don't want to see any sort of biodiversity collapse or anything, and we also don't want to see animals and others suffering for reasons that we can address and we could address through technological change and innovative change out of our cortex, but for reasons of almost laziness or ineptitude or whatever. We don't want it. We don't want that. We have to put our heads together, and we can achieve these sorts of things. And that's why Radfest networking events and oceanographic these planetary conferences are so important and so vital. And I really hope you guys had a really great time. What else did you learn? I have to put the sponsors up. I just realized I didn't put the sponsors up.
Yeah, the keynote speaker was quite an interesting woman. This woman has led over like 100 expeditions into the deep. She has more than 7,000 hours underwater, if you can imagine that.
Wow.
That's an incredible period of time. She's an artist. She's a photographer. She writes. She writes for National Geographic. Matter of fact, we bought her latest book, which Susan will hold up.
Which way do I go?
It's always the other way.
There you go.
Blue Hope. Exploring, caring for Earth's magnificent ocean. Absolutely. And it's got a beautiful picture of her swimming in a school of fish or something.
Yes, that's right. And I should point out, coming from the super longevity point of view, is that she is actively involved and very highly thought of in the community, and she is 84 years of age.
Wow.
She's still actively diving in scuba and actively diving in the subs. And she also reaches out to the younger generation. This is another book.
Oh gosh.
Which Susan will get. There we go.
Coral reefs.
She wrote the book, and it's illustrated by another person. And so she's going to, I bought this for my grandchildren. And so she's very active. She's worked in collaboration with the National Geographic Society. Amazing woman. She spoke to us. She's 84 years of age.
She was chief scientist of NOAA, National Atmospheric and Oceanic Administration. Quite an accomplished woman. But I loved the books for the general public, like the first one we held up. And then I loved the children's book. And I think this is something that we in the transhumanist community can learn from, because it really helps to spread the word. Through media, of this type.
Chairman Gennady is the only person I can think of that's done anything close to that with his Death is Wrong children's book.
That's right.
And I think that was a smashing success. He got it put into schools and he got it everywhere. But there's more room for that sort of innovation. That's fantastic innovation. Children learn that picture / because I still have memories of reading those sorts of picture books, and I learned a lot, because there's that association there. If it's a bad picture and a bad graphic, you want to go to the next page and see what happens and how to fix those. And I absolutely agree that this is a marvelous tactic to inspire younger generations to learn about the environments, whatever those environments happen to be, in this case, the ocean. I think it would do very well in a country like Australia, where we're struggling with issues like Adani and the Reef Project, because the Great Barrier Reef is the largest barrier reef, reef in the world, and it's suffering. This coral bleaching problem, the Adani project, which is all this mining coal dust and all this sort of stuff spilling into it, because they want to build more port facilities. Fertilizers rushing into the ocean and causing algae blooms, which then block out the sun. There's a heap of problems there. But some of the solutions. Some of these children are going to grow up to be legislators or scientists or whatever, and if you can inspire them through these sorts of methods of children's books, for example, or conferences, Absolutely, I'm 100% excited. That's coral reefs. I mean, that's a great innovation.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, and bringing students in at any level is a great idea. It's one of the things that this conference did really well, by the way.
Did.
We had professional company, actually from, what was it, Woods Hole Institute, come in and talk to us about what's going on with robotics, robotic undersea vehicles. And they talked about what the near-term future of that looks like. You know, we're probably used to seeing those dropped from boats and used to go places where human divers can't go.
Yes.
But now with GPS and with AI starting to come into the navigation for these, they can send them from port. They don't need a boat. They can send them out for weeks at a time without needing, a support boat to go along with it. So that was really cool. I love those pictures. But back to the students for a second. So when we came in, off stage left is an area just for students to sit. So they had student prices, which many conferences do, and they had students clearly identified in these seats. And then there was a student robotic competition, which was showed off out there. And so we're talking about students at various age levels building these robotic sea craft at various levels of complexity. So you've got the books, you've got the projects, you've got the education, and maybe most important, in my opinion, you've got the inclusion in what's going on right along with everybody else. They have a seat at the table just like everybody else did coming into this conference. Really amazing. And I will take that back to the transhumanist community and say, hey, we can learn from that. So this whole cross-pollination between different types of conferences is really amazing. So I was
you reminded me what I wanted to say, actually. Thank you for that. The reason I think there's such diversity at these conferences is because everything seems to be spiraling towards a singularity point. Everybody's being pulled into the same, we're all agreeing on the same problems, and that there's certain solutions to all of these global problems. And it's kind of like when you're in the United States, so it goes the other direction. When you have a sink and it all starts to go down the sink, right? But it goes the other way. Or the vines on the tree, they all go the other way, right? But it's because there's certain problems, and everybody is starting to agree from all the different industries, whether you work with planes, trains, automobiles, you work in finance, you work in AI, you work in media, you work in, I don't know where you work, it doesn't matter if you're a sewage or plant. You're all starting to agree that there's certain problems, and that everybody in the room is saying, hang on, I work in IT and I'm running into ecological problems that I never thought about. Hey, I work in X industry and I'm running into it. I work in defense. I work in aeronautics. I work in space. I work in, I don't know, pick your occupation. But they're all starting to agree, hang on, there's all these certain big problems, and we're all agreeing that these are huge problems, and it's coalescing around fundamentals, AI and oceanography and RADFest, super longevity. And so everybody from all these different industries is all agreeing on the same problems, and they're all coming to around about the same, so from different perspectives, but we're all saying, hey, we can use the mechanisms and tools, as crude as they are, to start to sort out these different problems. And they're all tackled from their all objective and subjective lenses, scientific or occupational or financial or whatever, and they're all saying, hey, we could do this, we can actually, and it's really positive in that way, that we can do it. But you're seeing the beginning of the cells are starting to split, the beginning of the genesis of what definitely is a global community coming together around certain issues from different occupational standings, and the ocean is front and center. I'm sorry, it's true. The ocean is front and center. And if you go to the United Nations, if you go anywhere, I mean, in the trade people that you mentioned, they're talking about economics and talking about boats going across, or if you're talking about the environment, you're talking about coral reefs, you're talking about the massive amounts of life that exist in these things. Science endeavors, so much to be discovered. As you said, most of it's not even mapped. I mean, it's not even mapped. I mean, we've got space to explore, but we also have the ocean to explore, and we have our own minds. That's the three big frontiers, is our minds. And we're going to be taking our minds into those two unexplored frontiers anyway. Obviously, as we get better with exploration and colonization and whatever, and living habitability and stuff, we'll have more experience in the ocean, and hopefully we'll sort that frontier out one day. But yeah, this is super exciting stuff. So what else have you got for me? Keep the gems coming.
There was so much.
What about some of the other speakers?
Well, fortunately, we were able to have lunch both days with a number of the different speakers that were there, and there was multiple tables, so we were fortunate to get some interesting people sitting with us. One of the person that I think Susan talked to at length was a gentleman that swam the entire Atlantic Ocean.
Yeah.
He spent, 73? He spent 73 days. He would swim 8 hours, get back in the boat, sleep, eat, get back in the water. 73 days of that to cross the Atlantic Ocean entirely under his own power. Not with a paddleboard or anything. This has been done this is just free swimming across the ocean. And he did this as a way to talk about what's going on in the ocean, because they took pictures every day and they had people that would follow this. This is the information age, after all. So he was able to put a face to things like the plastics problems that are in the ocean. One of the things that struck me, and then I want Susan to talk about this gentleman a little bit, because I think they talked for a little while. But I love the idea of space exploration. It's one of the things that makes me a transhumanist. I want to live long and prosper, as they say. I want to be around a long time to be able to see these things unfold. But at night, I live in Phoenix. We have clear skies most of the time. I can step outside and I can see the universe. I can look into infinity. I can see stars. I can see stars that light's been going for who knows how many years, right? So it's in my face. But without somebody like this swimmer, or without books like our keynote speaker puts out, the ocean's a little bit invisible to me. I live in a desert. I don't live near the ocean. I'm not confronted by the ocean every day or every night like I am, with the infinity of space. So these type of things, this gentleman swimming the entire distance across the Atlantic, for a while focuses us people that aren't around the ocean back on that. I think this is another reason I really want to see the colonization of our oceans. I would love to see cities at sea. I would love to see cities on the ocean floor.
Wow.
It makes it personal. It's where we live. I pick up the trash in my neighborhood, but I don't think about the trash floating halfway around the world in an ocean that is invisible to me. But I really am impressed with somebody. What was this guy's name? Ben?
Well, I can't really pronounce it. Lecomte.
A very French man. Yes.
Yes, very French. And he said here that he was he swam over 1,500 nautical miles in the Pacific Ocean last year, and over 300 nautical miles this summer, to collect scientific data and bring attention to marine plastic pollution. And you saw him swimming, and they're talking about the little microplastic in the ocean. There's so much plastic now in it that's broken down. And we just don't think about things like that. I mean, I've come back thinking, okay, I'm not going to use some plastic in my trash can so much when I recycle. It's just all these small changes that we can all make for the planet. But, how does the plastic get in the ocean? I mean, do they have rubbish dumps that are right next to the ocean and it gets swept? I mean, why does all this garbage end up in the ocean. How does that happen?
Yeah, there's huge problems, and the big one that's staring us in the face is the Great Pacific Garbage Patch. It's the size of a small country essentially, and it's just sitting there, floating about with all of. I mean, okay, that's a double-edged sword, because in one hand we know where it is. Okay, at least it's all in one area, and it's not just all spread out all over the beaches everywhere. On the other hand, it's kind of a problem because it's so big and so large that it's toxifying the ocean, and that's bad. But yes, you're right. The petrochemical boom in the 50s, we all love plastic, but they went nuts, and they they said synthetic oils and synthetic chemicals. All right, and they overproduced plastic for everything. They wrapped houses in plastic, their people in plastic. Everything became plastic. Even the toys. Barbie, she's a plastic girl in a plastic world, and people wanted to emulate a plastic figure. I mean, it's all got digital now, so it's people are emulating digital toys and things. But plastic was the hum of the day, and. You're right, Susan. I think there was a bit of ignorance. There was a bit of under-education. There was a lot of capitalist, corporatist greed that went into, manically destroying the ocean as quick as you possibly could to turn a quick buck. There was problems with. You don't think about it, but where did the United States and or Western countries export all of that pollution? Well, they sent it offshore. They had industrialization, and they said, "Oh, this is dirty. How can we export that? Oh, I know. Let's put it in a place like China or India or somewhere else where we don't have to think about it anymore." And the thing that we're talking about here on Debt Nation is, okay, we get that. We learn from that. But how do we stop countries and continents like, say, Africa, which are now heading into a development curve, to jump that dirty pollution development phase? Because there's no written law that says you dear Africans have to follow the exact same industrial curve that every other country has undertaken. You can jump up and skip some of those dirty development paths and go up and beyond, and not behave like the West or like China and India did in its development curve. And we could avert some of those problems that the second half of the 20th century saw. Okay, we're in the 21st century now. We're supposed to be enlightened creatures. We don't want. I don't want to see more land destruction, river destruction in Africa or wherever. But I also don't want to see the ignorance, perpetuated for the sake of maintaining a system. You understand what I mean? So let's open up our doors to some of our technological advancements, and let's help these countries, whether you're China, whether you're India, whether you're Europe or the United States, or whatever, and let's help some of these countries skip those development curves and those especially dirty aspects of those development curves, so you can have all of the benefits that they want, which is health span, lifespan, cleaner, better cities, bigger, better countries, that are more productive and wealthier. But at the same time, they don't have to be dirtier. They don't have to be. It's a fallacy. It's wrong. It's bad. And we can say to the world, we can help you. But it's up to politicians in our countries and business leaders and executives and people like yourself and people like me and people like at the Planet Ocean Conference to say, hey, look, we can do it. We can afford it because we can afford to do this, because if we don't do this, as you were saying, Susan, it's going to impact our lives, my life, your life, not just the people living. It's a global issue and it's a global problem, and we want the best scenario for everybody. So in that way, we have to scream at the top of our lungs and say, we can do it, global people. So it's totally true, and it's totally encouraging. What else you got for me?
Well, fortunately, one of the things that you were talking about there, the optimist in me agrees with you that we can do these things. And I think the telephone industry is a really good example. We started out in this country stringing ugly-looking wires across telephone poles, all across the country. Yes, with some pretty antiquated technology. But there are parts of the world that never had to go through that. They went immediately to the cell phone generation. Right. And you might think that, maybe cell phone towers aren't the most beautiful thing. But I'll tell you what, I think they're much less ugly to look at than, telephone poles, every few hundred feet or so.
You have to knock down acres and acres of trees as you go, yeah.
And then the wind comes along and down they come. So we do have some examples in the past that this sort of thing can happen. And I think it's good that from the economic standpoint, it makes sense. It doesn't make sense to go into these countries and do what we did, 100 years ago or 50 years ago. It makes sense to have them adopt our technology at the current state. So I think when it comes to solving some of these other problems, I think there can be economic incentive there that gets the entrepreneurs involved as far as marketing that type of a situation. Now we've got the right kind of people. Yes, the politicians help. They need to set a framework so that this can happen. I think that is up to people like us to be able to speak about these things and to help try to create that. And then the entrepreneurs will come when there's money to be made there. And like I said, the optimist in me, sees a good future for that. So perhaps with the emerging science that we have and a little optimism, we have some solutions to some of these things. We were talking about the microplastics, for example, or that floating city of plastic or floating nation of plastic that's out there. And as we move forward, things like future technologies that are in their infancy now, like nanobots, for example. I look at nanobots and what that might do from a medical standpoint. But nanobots can also be programmed to reassemble what is utterly waste plastic into something that could have economic value. And if we can structure that technology, and I realize I'm talking to the future here, but that's what I like to do. We can use this technology in a way that makes economic sense, that makes environmental sense, and works for us much in the same way as something that we take for granted, which was the telephone example that I talked about. Susan pointed out that one of the entrepreneurs that was at this conference is building plastic beach toys. What would have been like plastic beach toys, like a sand bucket and a shovel and those kind of things that you would go to. You do your 2-week holiday at the beach and you run down to the store and you buy some of this stuff. And then what happens? You don't take it home because you live in Phoenix, you don't have a beach, so you throw it away. Yeah. Instead, they're building these products out of plant-based material that will work. And we got the chance to play with some of them while we were there. The texture, the feel reminds you of like a plastic toy, except this thing is 100% biodegradable.
Wow.
So there's another example of an entrepreneur coming along and going, there's negative press out there about the plastic industry. I can sell a product that does something that's going to make you feel better and it's better for the environment. And it didn't take government regulation to do that. I'm not against government regulation, but if we can do it organically, that's even better. There was also someone there with fabrics and so forth that were better for the environment, and a number of other entrepreneurs. Can you think of some others or talk about that one?
Yeah, well, I know the woman who was making the non-plastic toys. She had like an aha moment. Like she was at the beach with the kids. She had plastic toys and then realized that a lot of those plastic toys all go out into the ocean. And that was when she had that aha, okay, I need to do something different. And she developed these non-plastic toys that look just like plastic toys. And they're not. So, people are inventing things all the time.
Yeah. So we have near-term science, like these plastic toys that aren't plastic and that are fully biodegradable. And then we have the more distant science that's coming along. I really do think there's room for for optimism, but that doesn't mean taking our eye off the ball, to use a sports analogy.
Yes.
We still need to stay focused on that. One of the people that was talking up there was talking about some of the dangers, and I asked him a question. I said, so what do you think is the best way to motivate the general public to make a change? And his answer is that, well, you need to lay out what the problem is, and that creates perhaps a bit of fear. But we don't want to leave people in fear. Then show them the optimistic alternatives to how we can go about doing this. So show them the problem, show them an optimistic way that they can get involved in to do something about that. So maybe these toys cost a couple dollars more than the cheap plastic toys that get stamped out.
Yeah, right.
When people understand the problem, perhaps they're willing to pay the extra money. I am.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, the Earth is quite a. It's small, but it's actually quite a big place when you realize how incredibly large it is, and the ocean, being a huge component of that, has absorbed a lot of pain. A lot of our mistakes. It's taken a lot of hits, and things like this biodegradable plastic. Susan, you mentioned the fact that you went home and you started to think environmentally from this about your own carbon footprint and how you can amend your own use so that you can have an impact. As this consciousness sort of wakes up to people, and it has been a process that's been happening post Earthrise. This is something that is going to come more and more to the fore, and you see it happening more and more. You see environmental protests more and more. You see the veganism movement, which is an active movement, which people are partaking in more and more. You see other things. You see Extinction Rebellion happening. You see governments and corporations incorporating environmental statements and environmental policies into their programs and into their business structures, because in a way, capitalists and consumers don't respond to businesses increasingly that don't take these considerations seriously anymore. If there is a price mechanism, and people will go on price a lot of the time, but it's not the only factor. There is an environmental factor, and it's showing that middle-class people, especially middle-class people, are some of the most environmentally conscious because they want something to live for. They want something, good values to pass on to their children. Usually middle-class people have at least one or two children, at least. Poor people, they have not as wide environmental conscious, but middle-class people especially are more environmentally conscious. They choose environmental products and things. So you do see a sea change happening. It's slow, it's cautious, but it's a sea change, and it's happening at the consumer level. It's happening at the economics level. It's happening at the CEO level. You see a lot more women getting into these corporate roles and such that and they have environmental focus sometimes, which is encouraging. So yeah, I do. And the lady you met, for example, Aquanaut astronaut, that's a lady, and environmentally conscious one at that. So what else happened at the conference? Let's. Yeah, because I've Ben Zion also. If you want him to join, he's on the line. He's a politician nowadays, and we can bring him in. We can bring him in when we're ready. But let's keep rolling on the conference.
Yeah. We look forward to having Ben join us on the call here in just a little bit. Susan's pointing out fish farming, and I want to talk about that a little bit. I think, at least in my own mind, fish farming has got a bad rap. I'd go to the grocery store and I would want to buy, wild-caught, Alaskan salmon or something of that nature. I was introduced to the idea of all these technologies are in motion, including fish farming, for example. So perhaps some of the things that I thought about fish farming as different generations have come along. Matter of fact, there was a fish farming company that was represented there. that their fish farms are off the coast of Mexico because they can get the right protections and the right licenses and the right approvals and so forth from the Mexican government. And they hold up, let's see, what am I trying to say? Their quality for their fish, how the fish are raised, not the use of antibiotics, but using modern science and so forth to be able to raise fish and do fish farming essentially right. He pointed out that the country of, maybe it wasn't him, but one of the other speakers pointed out that country of Norway is putting lots of resources into ocean agriculture. And there's a goal of moving, I forget now what the percentage of it is. I think it was around 20%, but I can't remember for sure. But moving protein production out of the land and into the ocean, where it can actually be done actually more environmentally friendly than it can, and then also frees up the land, for other such uses. So that's another example of where science is taking something and being able to make it newer, better, fresher. And of course, from a transhumanist standpoint, I really look at that, and I look at this exponential change in technology, and I would expect that the big data analysis that goes on, analyzing all the different aspects that's a part of fish farming, using it as one of the examples of this technology, that these improvements too will grow at an exponential rate. So the fish farming of 10 years ago is not the fish farming of today, and the fish farming of just a couple of years down the road is probably going to even be better as far as the impact that it will have and the amount of production that it will have. And then hopefully countries like the United States will develop, a framework so that companies like this can operate off of our shore. Because one of the questions that was asked is why they didn't do it in the United States. Yeah. And it primarily had to do with the regulatory requirements. And then bring on the politicians. This is where, we need to go back once again, raise this awareness, and it happens by us people in the middle class, as you say, all talking to each other and getting these situations out there.
Yep, totally
There
agree.
was a couple of other. Go ahead.
Pescatarianism is on the rise. That's another one where people are avoiding meat but choosing to eat fish, and that will be enhanced, if there is more ethical and better production rates in these fish farms. The other one, aquaculture is absolutely a huge industry that's booming, and one of our candidates, who is now not a candidate, obviously, but Kimberly Forsyth was at the frontier of aquaculture in Estonia, actually. As she was doing stuff over there with aquaculture, so that was very interesting. All right, sorry I cut you off.
Well, another place, I just wanted to say that fish farming isn't the only one of those. Solar wind power, for example. When we drive to California, we drive through a mountain area where there are lots of windmills, and it's modern 21st century windmills, and it's very impressive, and they put out a good amount of power. But the winds on land shift and change far more than the winds do in the ocean, I understand. So one of the speakers was talking about the sea being a platform for generation of wind power. And they didn't mention it, but I've also read articles about using the movement of water the same way in the ocean to be able to generate power. So people that don't like to look out their window and see a windmill, I guess until we build a city right next to it on the ocean, which will probably happen, and I really want to have happen. But until then, that's offshore and being able to get the power where it needs to go.
Yeah.
Deep sea mining is another area. We talk about mining on the moon and mining on Mars. Japan is putting a lot of resources now into looking at doing mining on the ocean floor. I think that's really incredible. And of course, all this technology, the robotic technology, the pressure suits, they talk some about what was it, special gases that you have to breathe when you go down deep, and the monitoring of the human physiology. I think it goes back to your point that all of these different things intersect. The science, the medicine, the finance, exactly right. Yeah, exactly right. And it's really exciting to see. After all, 2045 is not that far away.
Yeah, right.
No, not
Well,
at all.
I definitely want to go back next year. Be interesting because I know that Radfest has evolved. Like from the first Radfest to now, we've been to 4, and I feel that especially this year with Radfest, where Life Extension Foundation is doing the survey and the trial, like 250 people have joined up in this survey where you get your biomarkers done, and you can return again next year and get them done again. So they're developing something where people will want to come back next year to get their biomarkers done. And I feel now that Radfest has just absolutely taken off. Like it's a thing, it's set now. They're having it every year and people go every year. And I think that this Ocean Planet conference could be the same. Like I definitely want to go next year. And I would really like to see this as a thing, and I think it will. It'll just be an ongoing conference, and every year they get better, they get more information, they get more technology, and I believe this will just keep going.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree. And I think you were talking about the metrics of people getting their biomarkers tested at RadFest every year. That's good for research. It's good for us as individuals to have that done and know where we're improving and where we need to make improvement. But taking that back to Ocean Planet Conference too, doing something each year. We talk about the science, we talk about the state of the ocean each year. So in a way, we're doing a biomarker of the ocean as we move forward. So I see a parallel there, and that can help with explaining what's going on, which can be a little fearful perhaps from an environmental standpoint, but also hopefully can demonstrate the optimism that we have going forward. Here's the resources that we put into this. These are the people that have come together. It was wonderful seeing, for example, oil and gas executives and conservationists talking to each other, working on common problems. Yeah, this is exactly what we need.
Glad to hear.
Those parallels
I'm really
are
glad
wonderful.
to hear that the oil and gas industry was there. I hope Obama scared the daylights out of them. The BP oil spill in the Gulf of Mexico, I think it was mishandled, but he tried to. There's not much you can do with those big, powerful guys, but hopefully they're getting the message that people are concerned, and that there's a movement afoot to help regulate these guys into a sort of common sense of decency. With the planet. I'm really excited to hear that they even bothered to turn up, because it's not a compulsory thing, I don't think. I mean, it looks good in their books or something, but it's exciting to hear anyway that there's something there, because it's their planet too. Ultimately, they left to live here. It doesn't matter how much money they have, unless they want to go and live on a Mars mission thing. And I tell you what, the first couple of people who are going to live on Mars, it's not going to be that great. So if you want to go live there, I mean, oil execs or whatever, if you want to buy a ticket to Mars, I mean, it's not going to be all fun and games. You'd much rather stay here with your penthouse and your 10 bathrooms.
Yeah, you're right. Because if we trash this planet and then move on to another one, we'll just trash the next planet.
It's not a
So
good policy.
I think we need to get our act together here first.
Benzion is going to come in because he's got a lot. Because he was the star of Radfest. So Ben, I know you're watching. Give us a call. But yeah, Susan, sorry.
Well, actually, we met his VP at Ocean Planet. Like,
I was going to bring up Charlie Camp.
Ocean Planet conference.
Yeah, that's right.
So
Mr. Vice President was there.
Mr. Vice President was there. Well, he's best friends with Ray Kurzweil, so it was only, and Celia Black.
So come on in, Ben.
Yeah.
Yeah, Ben should be here somewhere. We're waiting for. Where are you, Ben? Are you here? Where are you, Ben?
He hasn't gone to sleep.
Come on, Ben. It's late on the U.S. East Coast.
Yeah, it is. Anyway, yeah. So Charlie Cam was definitely he's here somewhere. He's mucking around. But anyway, yeah, Charlie Cam. That's one because he's got the Institute to Expedite the Singularity now.
Yes,
He does.
Right.
Which is important too. Ben is someone who's big on longevity. Where is he? Ben, where are you? Ben is big on longevity. He's big on,
Yes, he is. Practical life extension is closer than you think.
Yeah, that's
his campaign slogan.
That's his campaign slogan. Yeah, absolutely. Let's see.
Oh, I think we.
Hang on. Hello, Ben.
Hey.
Hey. So I think I just kicked out Shumaker.
Oh boy.
We are live though, so.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I was having a little bit of trouble with my my other device, and I was maybe calling you from the other feed. So I'm calling you now from my secondary device. I'm enjoying the show. I'm enjoying the show tonight. I love David and Susan, and I was excited to hear about what they had to say about Charlie Cam. He's been a great friend to me throughout this, and in recent days, in fact, I have an exciting announcement, something that I spoke to Charlie about yesterday, and I will take a moment to speak about it as we have as we're addressing these other matters. Can you hear me? Okay, Steele.
Everything's fine. We lost David and Susan, which I'm unfortunately. I'm trying to get them back because we want them back. And we're having fun.
Okay, I have actually my headphones in, but they're connected to another device, so I want to make sure that everybody can hear me.
Yeah.
Yes. So in recent days, I've been working very closely with a few of partners from Benzion 2020, and we've determined that we are going to all be working together to break the Guinness World Record for longest immersion in virtual reality. That's going to be something that's going to be happening in January. You're going to be following the Benzion campaign, and you're going to see that we will break that record. And we've already contacted the Guinness organization. We've already set some of these matters in motion, and we're going to be working on a book on that subject as well. And so I'm very excited for at that prospect. The record at present is about 60 hours. And I'm expecting that we will have a full live stream immersion in virtual reality for a period of 1 month myself. And I'm going to be live streaming every moment of that. I'm going to be sleeping, and I'm going to be eating. I'm going to be working from a device provided by one of our partners. We have a partner in this from the Virtuix Omni organization. Virtuix is a company that manufactures an omnidirectional treadmill called Omni. And they're going to be providing that. It's an incredible device, and we are already having their support. And so I'm going to be doing these other ordinary activities, but I'm going to be in virtual reality full time for 1 month. We're going to blow that record right out of the water.
Wow, that's so American. I love it. Let's do it. I'm keen. I'll report on it. I'll be right here. Benzion 2020. Break a Guinness World Record. Woohoo! I'm excited.
Yeah.
Where is David and Susan? Because they need to hear this.
Yeah. Let's get there. David does know about this. He's been working with me quite closely on this. So he's a person that I was talking to about. We want to be able to submit this evidence. Have the Guinness World Record
people turn up, and have them monitor it.
Yes, that's a big part of that. But if we live stream this thing in its entirety, that's very helpful in this situation to allow us to make sure that we have crossed all the T's and dotted all the I's, and make sure that all of these requirements are met, because there's quite a few requirements for submitting something to the Guinness organization, and it takes about 12 weeks to get that application in. So we're already starting that.
Oh, there we are.
Hooray! So
We're
we're
back.
really,
Hi,
we're really sorry about that. That's just a Skype glitch thing that happened. It happens sometimes. But we got David and Susan back. Hooray! Because we've been waiting. We've been anticipating your return. We've also got Benzion in here. And he was just informing us that the Benzion 2020 campaign is going to go for a Guinness World Record, which is breaking news, which I didn't know about. That's really, really exciting.
Yes.
Let's
Yes,
hear
I'm
more.
very pleased. I'm very pleased that we're going to have this opportunity.
Well, we look forward to hearing all about that and seeing what goes on, Ben.
Yeah, definitely.
Yes. I'm muting when I'm not speaking because I'm calling from my secondary device. I had it set up with my laptop, which wasn't going through. So I can plug my headphones in momentarily, but yeah. So I'm muting when I'm not speaking. But yes, I'm very excited to let folks know about this and be working with folks. If you're interested in virtual reality and emerging culture of this kind, I urge you to reach out to me and work with us. We have a great team of folks. I'm going to be speaking to some of my friends, a lot of Davids, a lot of Jeremys.
All right.
The whole team from the Dutch Futurists working on this with us. We're really excited to be doing this. It's going to be an incredible presentation and opportunity. And, I think that this is something that we can do that really adds something to the conversation among techno-futurists, and also might be one for the ages, one that people can look back in that book and feel proud that we were involved in something like this.
Absolutely, and I'm really excited. Ben, we were talking about, you've joined us in the middle of a conversation about the ocean, and this ocean. Have you got anything to say on the ocean and the USTP and their willingness to protect the ocean and to attend these conferences about the ocean, about plastic pollution? What's the USTP on the ocean?
Yes. Yes, well, we have a lot of concerns about this. You've spoken and mentioned even in the course of this interview, speaking to John Carricks and Daniel Yelishvili. In the comments, we were speaking also to Stacy Scholz-NG, and she was talking a little bit about specifically altered bacteria that can degrade microplastics. This is a kind of program that would dovetail very well with these initiatives that Daniel Yelishvili is working on. In this area, he's written some wonderful pieces for us on these matters of ocean life. We know that a human being is very healthy when they're out in the sunshine and in nature. So these aspects of what we're talking about, virtual reality and telepresence, this is an important part of having a good experience in living in these kind of habitats. So I think there's a good connection there. We want to be thinking about how we can optimize quality of life for people who are living in these situations by using things like our Guinness World Record that we are working on, using virtual reality to be doing some work and also be having some fine experiences beyond simply just playing video games.
It's super interesting too, because you're talking about Guinness World Record and digital immersion and stuff like that. And Susan was talking about a man who swam across the Atlantic Ocean in order to could you just mute me? There's a lot of feedback on your end. But Ben. Susan was talking about a French man who swam the length of the Atlantic Ocean in order to raise awareness about plastic pollution. So maybe you can use your Guinness World Record attempt, or when you get it done, to raise a similar sort of awareness. So going back to Dave and Susan for a second, because what else did you accomplish at that conference, because we're working our way through the conference?
Well, one of the things that we're going to save for another discussion is we had the provost of the U.S. Naval War College there, and he gave a talk on what the changes that global warming and other things have in the 21st century are doing to the oceans and what that looks like from a naval perspective. Keep in mind that the person that was there was speaking as for himself. He didn't come representing a point of view of the U.S. government or the Naval War College, but the person's credentials are pretty hard, to ignore. And I am an advisor on military matters to candidate President Benzion, and I have some interesting information to share there. And by the way, I was out at the local Air Force base today looking at some things as well. But this will be a topic for another discussion. But this was actually part of the discussion. There was a naval captain that was there that talked about that was commander of a stealth destroyer, if you can imagine that. This huge ship paints a radar target no bigger than a small fishing boat out sitting in the ocean. So essentially, it's undetectable from other kinds of traffic. So this is this gentleman's background, and he talked about things such as how the common of the oceans and the common of the internet that we spoke about earlier, what they have in common. So these are teasers for a future discussion.
That sounds really, really good. And the commons is a really important topic, and if you don't get it right, you end up with the tragedy of the commons, right? Which is
that's right.
That's
exactly right. And there was talks on exploration. There was talk on the mechanics of the exploration, a lot of which I found fascinating. We had already talked earlier about the commonality between training for space and working in the ocean, and how NASA does a lot of its training in the ocean, how the astronaut that was there was also an aquanaut, and all these things that are in common. And then we started talking about, future science, what the impact of 3D printing has on the oceans. And my first thought was, what does 3D printing have at all to do with the oceans? Well, today, we mentioned earlier that 90% of the products that get sold are transported via the ocean. 90%. Most of that's finished goods. Now, there is bulk material that goes, but a great deal of it is finished goods. When it comes to 3D printing, it'll almost all be bulk material, and that will change the dynamic of what needs to be delivered. Finished goods, I order products and services, and they come from China, Japan, Korea, somewhere in Europe, or they need to be here by a certain time. I place my order on some platform, and I expect this to be delivered within 2 to 8 days. When it's bulk material, it's shipped on a completely different kind of time frame, because my finished goods now gets printed either on my 3D printer, or I go to some common 3D printing location and pick this up. And sure, that 3D printer needs the bulk material, and that's what's getting shipped now. But you don't have those tight time frames of shipping. So that's just one example about how a technology that we don't think of, that I didn't think of anyway, having anything to do with the ocean or having anything to do with transportation, has a huge impact.
Yeah.
So I found that pretty interesting. What about you, Susan?
No, I'm looking. You took lots of notes.
I took pages of notes.
I took lots of photos. I was taking shots of the slideshows, and David was busy writing notes. So you probably need to go through anything else what you did.
Yes. We talked a little bit earlier too about some of the artists that were there. So we had sketch artists, we had musicians, we had people that are into kite sailing as an art, and they use this to, bring attention to different things that need attention for the ocean, and also just the love of the ocean. It's not all about problems. It's also about drawing attention to the things that we all love. And I take that once again as something for the transhumanist community to look at, bringing those type of people in to draw in that mainstream. Earlier, we showed you a children's book, and we showed you an adult's book, and those bring that in. So these are things that cross-pollination between going to different types of conferences, really have in hand. And then, we saw transhumanists. We weren't the only transhumanists there. There was at least 2 others. And then we talked to many people about Ray Kurzweil, singularity, immortality, escape velocity. And they're very open, they're very receptive, and how that impacts the things that they're passionate about. So I want to take the things that the Ocean Planet Conference people are passionate about and bring them back to our community and continue to spread this.
Yeah, well, Benzion, your VP, Charlie Cam, was at this conference. That's a strategic move there in the campaign. Tell us about that.
Yes, I'm very pleased to be hearing a little bit about Charlie. I talked to him yesterday about this virtual reality immersion experiment that we're going to be doing. And he was very supportive. He suggested a number of people to be reaching out to start to spread the word about this exciting project. And Charlie's a brilliant man in all of these matters, and I'm looking forward to visiting his aquatic habitat one day. But yes. There's reasons to be optimistic about these things. And just a moment ago, though, I was looking at my feed, and it said that we're at a difficult point with respect to the Amazon rainforest. It's reaching a point of no return. It also says that we have 10,000 in just 2 years, 10,000 additional deaths from exposure to air pollution. Just in 2 years, this number has gone up significantly. So we have to consider these kinds of measures that we're looking at, and certainly oceanic bioremediation is an important area, something we were just speaking of with Stacy Scholes-NG a moment ago, but all of these matters that contribute to the health of our planet and to the health of these oceans are things that we have to take very seriously. Folks like Ray Kurzweil and Charlie Cam and our friend Celia Black, they have very good reason to be techno-optimists, but we must continue to march forward with fixing these great challenges that face our civilization.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm trying to remember the name of it. The great cycle that happens when the warm water sinks. I can't remember it. The warm water sinks, and then it gets flushed up to the cold regions, or the warm water rises and then the cold water sinks. It's the great ocean cycle that stimulates the weather. What's that thing called? The military. My brain's gone. The ocean cycle or something, right? Different from when it rains on land and it drains into the sea. It's the ocean current thing. Anyway, there's a big one. I can't remember what it's called right now, but it's freezing up. It's stopping. It's slowing. Whatever it is, and yeah, these are really serious concerns. Absolutely. If that freezes up totally, if it stops, weather goes nuts. The ocean is an integral part of the global weather system, and we're talking about global warming, global cooling. It doesn't matter what it is. The climate's changing, and that's going to alter geopolitics and the way that people interact and behave on the global map. And we don't want any more upset world than there already is. Okay, and so some of these issues we have to resolve and put to rest in order to have a safer, cleaner, better world. I mean, this is just I'm trying to think of the ocean current cycle, but I can't remember right now. But anyway,
and this feedback that I've been getting from people who are sick and tired of the two-party system. Been talking to these people in Washington D.C. Today, in Harrisburg, and these other parts of the country that I've been traveling to. I'm going to be going up to New York tomorrow. All of these people are interested in these innovative solutions to these grand challenges that we face and social issues as well. And this is something that we can offer in this as a different kind of voice than what folks are hearing, and they really like to hear about these technological solutions. So I'm really pleased to the way this tour around the United States is going. I'm going to be in New York tomorrow evening, and I'm going to then be traveling on to San Francisco on Friday, and continuing to spread the word about the United States Transhumanist Party and all of these various interventions of different kinds. And, even some of the more controversial things relatively, talking about longevity, people who are very open to these notions. And I'm very pleased the response that I'm getting from people about these things. I've had virtual reality on my mind for the last 48 hours. And but even these ideas of virtual reality, people are very interested in learning more and experiencing these things. Very few people can shut out all of these ideas. They might have criticisms of some of these notions, but very few people dismiss all of these things out of hand. And so it's always incredible to be talking to people about how techno progress will better their lives.
Yep, absolutely, and we have to spread the word of the United States Transhumanist Party as often and as best we can. We have to let people know that there is an alternative to the two-party system, that Andrew Yang isn't the ultimate answer, that he's part of the two-party system, and that although his message is good on some levels, there is a better alternative than Andrew Yang, and those Yang Gang people should come over to Benzion 2020, and you had the privilege of meeting Andrew Yang, and I think
I did indeed.
Yeah, tell us about that.
Yes, so I went to an Andrew Yang event that was at Howard University Law School, and that was a presentation about his campaign and his particular approaches to dealing with a multicultural society and sets of concerns there. There are very real concerns in our society where marginalized communities are not being treated quite as well as they could. And something like the Futurist New Deal, Social Security for All program is also a very good answer to some of those concerns. He mentioned that people of color are trending down in terms of their ownership of property. And that's a serious concern. And we need to do this for all people of lower socioeconomic status. We need to provide this kind of security in many ways so that they are able to live well, able to own things, able to make plans for the future. We cannot see our middle class collapse upon itself. And, I'm actually excited to have met Andrew Yang and ask him a question about his views on e-governance. I'm also excited because we have the prospect of having another a presidential candidate, John McAfee, on your program. He's agreed to do the show with our friend Dr. Robert Duncan, and I have a few questions for him. We might be able to work together with him as well.
Yeah, if I wasn't on a watch list before, I'm definitely going on a watch list after that one. I'll tell you that.
Yes.
Yeah,
but he is an interesting man, and he certainly knows an awful lot about these matters of e-governance as well. And I would very much look forward to having folks enjoy that show.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm really excited. I'm excited for that, and that's going to be really. That's going to be a doozy. I tell you what, the only step up from that is like having Julian Assange on the show, or some some derivative of him. I mean, it's it. Like Mr. McAfee, it's the big fish, right? So that's going to be really exciting.
I'm hoping to ask him if we have some prospects of working together with his organization in the United States Transhumanist Party. I think there's a lot of synergy there. So I'm hoping to have that conversation. So anytime,
he can definitely give you some software immersion.
And Mr. McAfee, we should set that up as soon as we're able.
As long as you're meeting on American soil and not in Cuba, it'll be above above board.
Yes, yes. Well, we'll meet in this virtual space that has things to recommend it as well.
Oh man, I got the jitters now. I'll tell you. But that's good. And Mr. Shumaker and Susan, you have to send me ocean people for interviews as well, because I'd love to interview an aquanaut astronaut, for example. I think that would be a great.
Yes, exactly.
No,
Well, I think the organizer would probably be open to that.
I think yes. We'll start with the organizer, and I'll send him a link to this, and then we'll ask if he would like to be on and talk, because I really think it's critical to bring as many parties to the table as we can, all talking about these common problems that we have and common opportunities. I don't want to just become problem-based, but there are many opportunities out there that are available too by working together, and having candidates like Ben out there talking to a wide range of people like this is exactly what we need. So really, really happy to be supporting Benzion 2020.
100%. I'm on the Benzion 2020 train as well, and Ben, it looks like we have a show maybe with an ocean conference person, because if we can get that, I mean, maybe we can send you to more of these ocean conferences. Ocean being we mentioned at the start of the show, Ben, that the land mass on the planet, it's big, but it's not as big as the ocean. It's the ocean is the real deal, and that's where, if you want to start to heal the planet, we really need to clean up our oceans. That's a huge issue there, and we can work back from that. There's plenty of land-based thinkers. The ocean, as Mr. Shumaker was making out, and you're in that Phoenix area as well. You're disconnected from the ocean. You've got a big open sky there. You can look back billions of years into the beginning of the universe, but you're a little disconnected from the ocean. So what do you say to an ocean conference here on Dead Nation, Ben?
I'm all for it. Yes. And I was at the Cato Institute, the Race for Space event, and we were speaking of all of these fine folks that we're speaking to. I met a clever young attorney named Baron Zuba, and he's agreed to also do the show. He has a specific set of interests, a broad set of interests in this legalities of space. But one of those interests is modifying the legalities around cleaning up space debris to make it easier to clean that up. As of this point, you cannot remove someone else's satellite from space, and it's also incumbent upon that person or entity to remove that from space. But very few of those people are actually doing it. Right. And that's something that's directly inhibiting something like my friend Nikolai Agapov from building his partial space elevator from the International Space Station down about a third of the way to Earth, because that space junk will sever that tether very quickly. Yes. So I'd like to really do that show with Baron Zubo, and he's a very clever young man. But so there's very many fine folks that we're meeting, as David mentioned, and we want to get them on Dead Nation and be continuing this incredible tech policy salon that we have here. Nothing like it on the internet, truly, and that's a credit. That's a credit to you, Steele, and that's a credit to this tremendous slate of partners that you've developed, and all of these wonderful things. I'm really pleased to have been on this show, and really, really pleased to be working with all of you.
Yeah, no, Benzion 2020, it's in motion. We keep the momentum up. It's thanks to people like Dave and Susan for throwing a massive amount of support. I just realized I've got your names around, Dave, you're Susan. I got your names around. I think people will understand though. I'll try and fix that up. But yeah, no, yeah, no, it's people. It's the tremendous amount of support from people like Dave and Susan, who really make the movement and these ideas worth. I get excited, when I'm going to get a show with Dave and Susan. I think, wow, this is going to be a really good show. This is because these people are, what makes it worth it, and I really thank you, Dave and Susan, for your hard work, your effort, your enthusiasm, especially. That's really important, actually. It's because we do sit here and we do go over a lot of problems. We're solution based. We're trying to come up with practical solutions, but we have to analyze a lot of different problems, and sometimes that can get a little trying and testing, because there are some big problems, but also when you guys bring your energy and your enthusiasm and your optimism to the table, and you share it around, and it really encourages the rest of us to say, actually, what we're doing is a fantastic thing, and we're going to battle on and forward on and press on with some of these to sort out some of these big global issues together. Working together, we can achieve a lot, and I really appreciate your support, and thank you for supporting Debt Nation as well. It's incredible, your support, and all of it. Thank you so much, Dave and Susan, for all your hard work.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. And like you say, we are trying to point out solutions as well as the problems. And maybe I'll end, or at least come close to an end, with one of the quotes from one of the entrepreneurs that we saw there. And they were talking about how to solve some of the issues and so forth that we have. And from an entrepreneur's standpoint, they were looking at how there can be economic opportunities in solving some of these issues that are out there. And the quote is if the capital is there, the will appear. Many times, we're out there trying to create a political will to get something done, and that's very good and very important. But if we can find an economic imperative, such as the one that we talked about with the microplastics earlier, and turning that into something that is a money generator, then if the capital is there, the will appear.
Absolutely. It's about turning capitalism on its head by incentivizing consumers. And really, we have to think about the earth as a consumable item that we want to consume for a long time, in that way. And then that all of a sudden, the earth's health becomes part of your problem. It's really great. Susan, did you have anything final to say? That was a profound point from Mr. Shumaker.
I'm not sure I can match that profound point, actually. I'm just really thankful to have been on your show and to tell you about the adventures of David and Susan, and watch for the next episode, I think. That's probably what I want to say.
We're always happy to have David and Susan on the show, and we're all anticipating what's next. What is it next? Is it a space? Where are you going next? Do you have any idea?
Oh, it's a secret, but we'll let you on it eventually.
Definitely. All right.
I'll say that Poe might be making an appearance. Poe Benzion, unofficial mascot of the United States Transhumanist-Party.
It really is.
No, we'll see what happens. Everybody's clamoring to see Poe. So we got to try and see what we can do.
We might be able to look after Poe for you while you're traveling, but honestly, we're going to different places all the time now that he'd be home alone for quite a lot of the time.
We couldn't do that to a celebrity like Poe.
No, Poe is staying at Grandma's house in the country up in Sun City for now. But he's having a wonderful time. He's made best friends with another Chihuahua, and he's having a really nice time up there. But we do want to at least have him make the occasional appearance so folks can say hello to Poe. Yeah, I want to say what you were saying before. What we can do to turn capitalism on its head is we can focus on how we make digitalization a real part of our society and a real part of our government, and also doing those things that we must do in the case of the federal land dividend. The Social Security for all that is provided there is something that puts everyone in the mix. It gives them skin in the game. It gives them a better life. It gives them a better outcome as entrepreneurs and citizens. That is the very least that we can do for our citizens. And that Social Security for all is an It's an important and powerful idea, and it's funded through this federal land dividend, so it has very little economic downside to focusing on this kind of program. So there's so many things that we could say about new sectors in the marketplace and how they can be used. All of those things are built upon by taking care of our citizens, and there's a network effect there that is tremendous, and it's well understood. And we have to have the courage of our convictions to support that.
Well, David, Susan, I don't want to hold you hostage forever. So if you guys want to go, I'll leave Ben. Stay on the line. I'll let you two go. Thank you so much. It's almost been 2 hours, but thank you very, very much for coming on and keep us updated. And yeah, go and talk to the Ocean Planet person, and we'll get him on with Benzion, and we'll have a nice conference here and sort out some ocean problems. But keep it coming, because you know, we're here, we're ready, we have this moment in time, we have the resources. Let's make it work while we can. It's a lot of fun. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
All right, thank you very much, Steele, and good night, Ben.
Good night.
Good night, guys. Thank you.
All right, well, that's Dave and Susan coming straight from the United States. You know, Ben, we'll hang on the line with you just for a moment to get all the latest on Benzion 2020.
Yeah.
So we mentioned a couple of things. We haven't talked in a little while. So you've done your Arlington speech, yeah? And you did your opening stuff, and you've been to Andrew Yang. Just unpack some of that, your little journey so far on your tour of the United States.
Yeah. Well, the Arlington speech that I gave was a powerful moment in my life. Really, it was a speech to describe our prospects for life extension in these more poignant of terms. And I'm the first to admit that I was a little overwhelmed feeling writing that speech and thinking about that, but it was very well received. And I think that people are really going to enjoy when they see the video of that, because it was an incredible moment for me, and I think it will be a powerful moment for those folks as well. We got to do some other wonderful things in Washington, D.C., meeting with wonderful groups, the D.C. Less Wrong group, the D.C. Transhumanist-party group a few times. We had a few different meetings of this kind, and got to see so many incredible other events, including the Cato Institute that I mentioned, and a number of other wonderful events. Really, really an incredible time in Washington, and I'm looking forward to going back to our nation's capital again as soon as possible. I'm going to be, as I said, in New York doing some events and taking lots more photos and meeting lots more folks, and maybe possibly going on to some other news channels as well. I'm very excited by all of these things, and then going to also be coming back for an event in Princeton. I'm very excited about that. That's on November the 22nd to the 24th, as well as going to the Foresight Institute event. That is November 2nd, 3rd, and 4th. And so I'm going to be speaking at both of those events. It's an incredible thing to be able to do this. And I couldn't be happier with these opportunities that have arisen, and happier with our incredible donors. I won't mention them by name because they are humble folks, but our donors have been incredibly kind to us to help keep this campaign afloat, so that it's not simply something occurring in a telepresence like our immersion experiment to break this Guinness World Record. We want to do those things, of course, but we want to be able to get out across the country and meet folks and tell them the good news about life extension, tell them the good news about the futurist New Deal. And the only way to do that is if we have the support of these donors. So please consider donating something to the Benzion 2020 campaign. We have our website up, and we are going to have those opportunities for donors more and more in the coming weeks.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, remember go to the website. Email Ben at benzion2020@gmail.com. Is it? Yeah, that's right.
That's correct. That's correct. Please. That's an email that you can reach me at any time, and we can make arrangements for you to support this campaign at this time as well.
If you can't get in touch with him, I mean, always contact Detonation, talk to Detonation, detonation@gmail.com. I mean, at outlook.com. Get in touch with me, Steel Archer at Detonation. We're also supporting the Benzion. We'll refer you to Ben if you need to. Thanks again.
Precisely, yes.
These are not empty words when I say thank you, Dave and Susan, and thank you, someone like Dan Elton, Dr. Dan Elton as well. These people are absolutely fundamental to the longevity cause. Raising awareness, helping out a presidential candidate who is arguably better than Andrew Yang, in terms of policies and what we stand for. I would say better, definitely. So thank you so much. Sorry I cut you off. What were you saying?
No, only that, folks. Some of our donors, I think, might like to come on Detonation and talk about these matters as well. I can think of one in particular. I think that he would enjoy it. So I might ask him that. And anybody who wants to participate in this discussion, no matter what kind of donation or work you're going to do, so people have been incredibly generous. But also, come on the Detonation show and let's talk about these matters relating to tech policy that are of interest to you.
Yep, absolutely. It's about policy, talk tech, longevity, super longevity, transhumanism being at the core. Absolutely. And if you want a presidential candidate, or if you want a party that has a different conversation, that's talking a different tone, I mean, you really have to look up this guy, Benzion 2020. I mean, you can balance the Futurist New Deal off against other policies, libertarian policies. We have plenty of libertarians in the party. It's not just a left-leaning thing or a right-leaning thing. It's a very diverse group of people with some very diverse talking points that huddles around this similar issue of sorting out global problems. And how do you sort out some of these big global problems? Well, you have to start with the United States being, the big, bulky power that it is. And if you can change the United States being, say, a cultural leader in the world, then you can start to change global minds on these tech policy issues. And these impact. Thank you very much again, Dave and Susan, for coming on. And we're talking about the ocean, talking about the environment with Mr. Yelishvili, talking about space, talking about Neuralace, Neuralink, cognitive abilities, talking about nanorobots, Eric Drexler, talking about AI, talking about IT, information technology, talking about the internet. We're talking about, geopolitics. We're talking about sometimes hard policy changes to try and reduce the amount of geopolitical risk that's exists in the globe. You've got someone who's unstable like Trump, who moves troops in and he moves them out and he makes it unpredictable, and these countries don't know how to operate. It's causing a lot of friction globally, and the United States Transhumanist-Party is opposed to that sort of in-out policy where it's an unstable world. We're trying to make a better world, a more stable world. So talking big on geopolitical issues, talking big on the economy, knowing that the fossil fuel era is dying. It's being left in the dust, and that we're emerging into a new digital age with data being at the center of that, being the new oil of the 21st century. I mean, we know all this stuff, and we're trying to tell you, the world, how to, that we have policies and tech solutions and ideas that can enhance your country, my country, and people and humanity around the world. We can become better people, better humans. We can become transhuman. We can go beyond left-right politics, and we can go on an upward trajectory, unprecedented in human history. So we need everybody we can to, if you're in the Andrew Yang crew, you're just supporting another big party. Don't do it. Don't fall for it. Get behind Benzion 2020. Don't fall for the left-right paradigm. They're just using Andrew Yang to... And Andrew Yang is not a bad person, and this is not a rant against Andrew Yang. He's a fine human being, and he's talking a lot of great points and stuff. But again, his only way in is being a Democrat, and we're trying to get out of that left-right paradigm, and don't fall for it. Get behind Benzion 2020.
Yeah. And, you know, I'm reminded of a particular discussion that I've had recently. I mentioned this donor. His name is David. He's been a real friend to Benzion 2020. And we talked about the idea of addressing existential risks, particularly risks that derive from artificial general intelligence and advancing technology in other areas, and particularly around a CRISPR type technology, versus a need for civil liberties, you know, weighing these two things. And, you know, he has some reservations about giving up some of those civil liberties. You know, he's a little bit rightly concerned, as anyone might be. But you know, this is a kind of discussion that we have in this organization, is how to address those concerns, how to think clearly about where this civilization is going over the course of these many decades remaining in the 21st century. And that's not a conversation that's being had by Democrats. It's not a conversation that's certainly being had by Republicans. And you're right, Andrew Yang has some good ideas, but these are ideas, some of them that were pretty well poached from the United States Transhumanist-Party from 2016. So it's better to support the people who are really out on the edge, the cutting edge of these tech policy notions.
Yeah, because you're right, because they did poach these, and that's what I was trying to say. I mean, these people are political enemies now. Not that it's not a judgment of character. It's not saying anything. You know, it's just saying that, you know, they're part of a big party, and that, you know, they're using him to rip on the United States Transhumanist Party. And the thing is that we're going to generate more of these ideas. You might as well be here, because we're going to sit here and we're going to generate more of these ideas. They're just going to steal, and then it's like, oh well, look how smart Democrats are. But really, they're not that clever. They're just copyright frauding the United States Transhumanist Party. So if you want to be at the front and the fore of these policies, and you think you have something valuable to contribute, get behind Benzion 2020, or, you know, talk to Detonation, or join the USTP, or do whatever you can, because you too can sort out global issues. You too can have a voice. You too can support a political party and a political campaign, the Benzion 2020 campaign, that is actually changing the course of the conversation. It's not just a copyright fraud. We're doing the hard work here of generating these policies. And again, it's not an attack on Andrew Yang. It's not an attack on his character or his judgment. It's just saying that the Democrat machine and the Republican machine are going to continue to rip you off until you actually put your feet down and say, actually, no, I'm not going to let them rip me off anymore. I'm going to stand behind a party that actually is having good, valuable conversation, and something that's contributing to the betterment of society and humanity and the United States, and by extension, the rest of the world. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. And, you know, I'm reminded of these conversations in recent days and weeks about this Guinness record breaking virtual reality immersion project that we're working on. And, you know, this was born out of conversations, because we had a number of projects of this kind that we want to be working on, and we'll continue working on beyond 2020 and throughout. But this was born out of a conversation with one of these donors to a high degree. His name is David. I mentioned him a moment ago. So what we're not just asking for you to participate in this sense that Democrats do, where they send you a number of emails asking for money every day. What we want you to do is help craft this future that we want to build, and that's something that you can do with an organization like the United States Transhumanist Party that you will never be able to do to that degree with a Democratic organization. And we do have an awful lot of influence, even though we're a relatively small organization. We are doing incredible things in this world. We have ties to incredible folks who are very influential in many sectors. And so we encourage you to try to look past this sort of brainwashing in thinking about the role of the two-party system, and get more involved with this organization, because we're doing the better class work.
And I have to interrupt the flow of the whole show, and I have to just say one thing. And I'm really sorry. It's really tired. You're really tired. It's probably really late there in the United States right now, and we'll let you go in a sec. But I have to.
Exactly.
I have to just call this out, because we have an announcement here, because people watching might see this article floating around or something. And I just want to update people that the U.S. Transhumanist-Party condemns the erroneous intentional misinformation from Biohack Info and the Nick Superk. So if you have seen a Biohack article written by Nick Superk, it's yellow journalism, Chairman Gennady is denouncing it. Are you also denouncing it, Benzion?
Oh, indeed, yes. We don't need to be seeing misinformation in any kind of silly kind of insinuations. The United States Transhumanist Party has always conducted itself in a professional way, and yes, I will also stand by this repudiation of foolish sort of storytelling.
Yeah. So the United States Transhumanist Party, or Transhumanist Party USTP, unequivocally condemns the false, invented, and malicious allegations contained in two recent articles, one by pseudonyms Author Glyph and Cypher R on the Yellow Journalism Bioinfo website, and another by the pseudonyms of Nick Superk, published on the Trigger Warning magazine, edited by Rachel Haywire. These articles are part of a deliberate, coordinated attack on the transhumanist movement and many decent, distinguished, accomplished, and benevolent people working from within. These articles contain numerous outright lies and other half-truths, cherry-picked, facts distorted beyond recognition, okay? The USTP is of the view that the authors of these articles are well aware that they are lying and using the lies in order to sow chaos and exact vengeance for their side's loss in the recent USTP electronic primary, which I have to announce it was the most fair Democratic primary ever. Chairman Gennady and the officiators did a fantastic job. They did an absolutely outstanding job. It was the best one we've ever had, and you have to stand by those that you have to stand by that. That was a democratic process, and they've done a great job, and you're on tour now. It's great. These tactics, precisely the ones which lead to detractors, despicable, unconscionable, and immoral. They must be called out and as such, and whenever they are encountered. Furthermore, the content on the Biohack Info and Superk articles is libelous and defamatory. So there's legal issues there, and it defames the USTP. So this is why I'm bringing this up, because this is Nick Superk. He's come on. I've given him a chance twice on this show. After this, I will be talking to Chairman Gennady whether or not he can come on Dead Nation anymore, because
ban him from the show.
Yeah,
he's no good.
I think so. I think we'll have to ban him, and maybe even Haywire if they don't definitely denounce this sort of behavior. While the USTP does not consider it worthwhile to initiate legal action, lucky them, in response to these libels at the time of the barring further provocation, the USTP instead endeavors to bring actual facts of relevant matters to light. For echoing words of Justice Louis Brandeis, sunlight is the best of disinfectants, and transparency on the part of the USTP is hoped to thwart the proliferation of falsehoods spread by Biohack and of Superk. The USTP is the largest transhumanist political organization in the world, a non-monetary organization staffed entirely by volunteers and devoted to the advocacy of emerging technologies, life extension, and rationality. Those who are interested in the USTP actually stand for can visit the website, talk to me, talk to Gennady, visit the website, read what they actually say here. And it goes on and on. But I had to break up the flow of the show, and I have to call out Nick Superkay, and I have to call out Rachel Haywire. You have to stop this, because normal people that we need to sort out actual, real global solutions are being turned off the Transhumanist Party by your libelous and defamatory comments.
Yes, yes. We want to be doing that good work, and we should be proud of the way that this election was conducted. As there's an incredible amount of transparency, as you and Chairman Stoliarov have described, and there's this kind of behavior shouldn't be continuing. This is a behavior of someone who's interested in continuing the presidential run, maybe not interested in talking about tech policy matters. So trying to shift your attention to matters that she is interested in talking about, which is frankly silly matters. And so we want people to be a little smarter than that. Insulting people's intelligence in this way is part of the reason why she lost a lot of the support that she had at the earlier part of that primary election.
Absolutely.
And and Gennady and others, many others have said as much. So I feel very unfortunate to have come out of this election, and I recognize that there was a lot of things done and said to that, and but I'm very pleased with the way it turned out, and I'm very pleased to have met Rachel Haywire. She's a lovely person, and she brings a lot to this community, and I hope that we can find some way to build a working relationship with all of those folks.
Absolutely. All right, I'll let you go, Ben, because you've got more campaigning to do. You've got to get some sleep. It's not good for you to stay up too late. So thank you very much for joining us on this really late edition. Your time, it's fantastic. We had a great time. Thanks to David and Sue for bringing us updates on the Ocean Planetary Conference, and also, I'll have Chairman Gennady on. I think I'll organize that when I can to come on and denounce further this biohack, trigger warning, Rachel Haywire, Nick Superkay assault on the USTP. It's got to stop. You're turning people off actual policy making and actual solution-based analysis. So yes, thank you very much, Ben. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Folks, I know you're interested in virtual reality and augmented reality. Reach out to me, benzion2020@gmail.com. Give me your thoughts on this full immersion experiment. We're going to break the Guinness World Record for full immersion. You all should be a part of that. You all should be excited about that. And please send me your thoughts, and we'll work together and make this an incredible experience.
Detonation, mainstreaming transhumanism, putting death out of business. That's Benzion coming to you from the United States, from Washington, D.C. Thank you very much, Ben, for coming on the show. Thanks, David.
Thank you.